Do you ever wonder where we go after this? Are you high right now? Do you ever get nervous?
Welcome back to Modern Investing Techniques, episode 117. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Today is July 25th, 2026. Time to break down today's market setup and find our edge. Quick reminder, everything we discuss here is for education and entertainment. The practice investment of the day uses simulated trades with no real money. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice. Always do your own research before putting real money to work. Canadian investors eyeing energy exposure should note Ukraine's push for a 30-year LNG Pact with Canada, potentially boosting domestic producers. Index levels are unavailable today, so we cannot report the Nasdaq composite level or its year-to-date move. Portfolio cumulative return, year-to-date return, and alpha versus the Nasdaq are also unavailable in the current feed. The Bank of Canada schedule shows an interest rate announcement and monetary policy report due October 28th, with markets watching for any shift in the overnight rate path. This fits the ongoing central bank rate cycle arc by keeping the focus on when the next policy move might arrive and how rate-sensitive sectors could reprice. AI infrastructure spending remains a dominant theme, with Alphabet's projected $205 billion capex set to flow into chips and data centers. Energy names could see rotation support from both the Canada-Ukraine talks and Red Sea shipping disruptions. About 15 days ago, we picked DAL on earnings resilience. The quick fade reinforced that even strong revenue prints need volume confirmation to hold. Crypto flows add another layer, with Ethereum ETFs posting a final day outflow while still extending a 3-week inflow streak, and Bitcoin slipping below $64,000 amid weakening stablecoin inflows. A concentrated rally occurs when a handful of large cap names drive most of the index gains, leaving smaller stocks and other sectors behind. Europe's equity market has flipped from its traditional broad participation into exactly this pattern in 2026, mirroring the US experience where a few mega-cap AI stocks have dominated. The Bloomberg Markets report notes that the European equity market had long been viewed as immune to shocks driven by only a handful of stocks, yet a narrow rally this year has completely flipped that script. For Canadian investors, this matters because the same dynamic can appear on the TSX when resource or financial names lag behind a few dominant names. One practical way to monitor it is to compare the equal-weighted version of an index against the cap-weighted version using free charting tools on TradingView or your broker platform. A widening gap signals concentration risk. Historically, this setup has produced sharp reversals when leadership rotates, but it can also persist for months, punishing diversified portfolios that hold the broader index. The risk is that a sudden policy or earnings shock in the leaders triggers a broad sell-off. Check the 20-day volume on the leaders versus the broader index before assuming the trend will continue. This is the exact scenario where our earlier rule about volume confirmation would have helped. Now for the practice investment of the day. This is a simulated trade for educational purposes only. No real money is involved. Today's pick is EPD, Enterprise Products Partners, listed on the NYSE in the energy sector. The strategy is a dividend compounding entry on a midstream pipeline name with stated momentum into the second half of the year. The hold period runs Monday through Friday. The catalyst comes from Motley Fool analysis that flags the stock's year-to-date outperformance versus the S&P 500 and argues the momentum can continue on stable fee-based cash flows. The technical setup highlights the stock's consistent dividend growth and current yield as the primary setup. Risk assessment notes that geopolitical or regulatory changes to energy infrastructure could pressure the name, with a 5% stop loss below recent support planned. The target is plus 2% to plus 4% over the 5-day hold, driven by continued income and modest price appreciation. Confidence level is low because this is a single-factor thesis with no volume or technical confirmation in the source material. This trade demonstrates how to screen for names with durable cash flow visibility and growing distributions rather than chasing headline growth stories. Listeners learn to weigh the reliability of midstream fees against broader commodity volatility before committing capital. We will track this simulated position through the week and evaluate it on Friday. Now for trade review. Last week's completed hold showed the limits of earnings resilience without supporting volume. The simulated entry occurred at Monday's open, and the exit at Friday's close produced a loss. The thesis did not play out as expected because the revenue print faded quickly. What this teaches us is the need for volume confirmation even on strong fundamental prints. This did not work, and the adjustment is to require at least one confirming technical factor before the next entry. The Yahoo Finance ETF Flow Tracker is a free screener that lets users filter ETFs by weekly net inflows or outflows and sort by asset class or geography. Canadian investors can quickly see whether energy or AI-themed funds are attracting institutional money and use that as one input before adding to a TFSA. Access it directly on finance.yahoo.com under the ETF Screener tab. No paid tier is required for basic flow data. The same dataset also shows Ethereum ETFs closing the week in the red after snapping a 5-day inflow streak while still extending their overall weekly inflow run to 3 weeks. Ukraine seeks a 30-year energy pact with Canada. The proposal centers on Canadian LNG supply under an energy security bridge framework that could support domestic export infrastructure. Energy Minister Denis Shmyhal said Ukraine is looking to sign the long-term strategic agreement focused on the supply of Canadian LNG. This development sits inside the tracked central bank rate cycle and AI infrastructure trade context by adding a potential new demand channel for Canadian energy exports that could influence sector rotation decisions. Action is to add Canadian natural gas producers with LNG exposure to your energy watch list for any follow-through announcements. Bitcoin price falls below $64,000 as stablecoin inflows weaken. The move coincides with a second day of Bitcoin ETF outflows, extending the weekly inflow streak to 3 weeks despite the daily dip. The price action also aligns with the broader crypto market structure. Questions the show follows around ETF flows and institutional adoption. Action is to cross-check any crypto allocation against 2 independent price feeds before considering a re-entry on weakness. Alphabet's projected $205 billion capex can lift 3 AI stocks. The spending is expected to benefit suppliers in the data center and memory supply chain, specifically naming Cipher Digital, Micron, and Broadcom as positioned to gain. This continues the AI infrastructure trade arc by highlighting which second-order names may see revenue lift without direct chip exposure. Action is to review existing AI infrastructure holdings for any second-order names that may see incremental revenue without direct chip exposure. Saudi Arabia-bound supertanker U-turns before Houthi choke point. The vessel reversed course ahead of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait amid ongoing regional shipping risks tied to the Houthi blockade on ships linked to the kingdom. A Hong Kong-flagged supertanker bound for Saudi Arabia's Red Sea port of Yanbu executed the turnaround just before reaching the choke point. Action is to hold CAD cash rather than adding new energy shipping exposure until the Red Sea situation clarifies. Now here is something that most retail investors get wrong, and it cost me money before I figured it out. Imagine you added an Ethereum ETF to your TFSA last week after seeing 5 straight days of inflows. Your purchase executed at the prevailing market price, yet the very next day the fund posted net outflows and the price dropped. What actually happened is that authorized participants create or redeem ETF shares in large blocks only when arbitrage opportunities appear between the ETF's market price and the underlying crypto holdings. Retail flows alone do not force immediate price movement. In the most recent week, Ethereum ETFs recorded a net outflow on the final day, even while extending their 3-week inflow streak, showing how daily noise can mask the longer trend. Bitcoin ETFs logged a second day of outflows, yet also kept their weekly inflow streak alive at 3 weeks. The pro tip most retail investors miss is to look at the premium or discount to net asset value reported each morning on the issuer's site before trading. A persistent discount can signal that selling pressure is already priced in. The biggest mistake with ETF flow data is treating one day's print as a directional signal. Instead, always average the last 5 trading days and cross-check against the underlying asset's spot volume. Portfolio performance shows running totals unavailable in today's feed. Win rate and average return per trade cannot be updated without the current tracker numbers. Our AI analysis continues learning from patterns such as the need for volume confirmation on earnings-driven moves. Before we wrap, open your brokerage platform and pull up the 5-year dividend growth history for one energy midstream name you already own or are watching. Note the compound annual growth rate of the distribution and compare it to the current yield. Tomorrow, I will have an update on how the EPD simulated position is tracking after the first trading day. That wraps up today's modern investing techniques. Remember, every trade is a learning opportunity, win or lose. Subscribe, share with a friend who wants to invest smarter, and we'll see you tomorrow. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at Nara Network. Links in the show notes. One more thing. If you like today's episode, our sister show, Fascinating Frontiers, is worth a spot in your feed. The most fascinating news from space and science. It's one of the Nara Network's daily briefings, all free at naranetwork.com. Following the long arcs, story trackers on naranetwork.com follow major programs across episodes: Tesla, SpaceX, AI, space science, and more. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.
Do you ever wonder where we go after this? Are you high right now? Do you ever get nervous? Do you ever stay awake, counting sheep like all the time? What's your life like? What's your purpose? When's your birthday? What's your sign? Are you down right now? Are you stuck up in the past? Are you still thinking about all the times that you didn't laugh?